I want to shift attention here from the individual and corporate success stories to the processes of institutional restructuring in both the aid industry and in the informal economy that are going on in the context of the rise of bottom-of-the-pyramid strategies. What seems to me is going on here, if you actually look at the institutional level, is a restructuring of economic development and informal economic systems to serve the needs of multinational corporations rather than to serve the needs of the poor, diverting resources and organizational energies away from the real needs of the poor. And this happens in a number of ways. One of the first and perhaps most emblematic is if you look at the World Bank's recent report, The Next 4 Billion, you'll see that BOP markets are not a pyramid. They are a Christmas tree. And the Christmas is coming for multinational corporations, not for the poor. They still don't know it's Christmas time. It is a Christmas tree because the bottom segment, those who earn under $500 a year, is very, very small. Many people, low purchasing power, of no interest. And that is the segment that is traditionally supposed to be of interest to international development. The second issue is that the kinds of products that BOP focuses on actually involves a shifting of attention from public goods to transforming them into private consumer goods. So instead of focusing resources and attention on clean water, public health services, which the poor get for free, they focus attention on soap and water purification tablets and pharmaceuticals, which the poor have to pay for, and on the distributive systems that can help those penetrate into the rural areas. That also creates problems in terms of the kinds of scientific debates and aid debates that influence what kinds of activities resources should be invested in. And some of you may have noticed yesterday in the Financial Times, there was an article which was denouncing the investment of resources in larvicides for spraying against malaria, because they said that bed nets were in fact much more important, even though the WHO has actually pointed out that public investment in larvicides is an effective and in fact more cost-effective way of dealing with malaria than simply focusing on privately provided bed nets. So it actually does warp the scientific and aid debates to have very powerful multinational corporations deciding what kinds of products and strategies are important for the poor. A further point is that it actually changes the nature of jobs for the poor. There's some talk here about Unilever being involved in job creation, but it creates jobs only at the very bottom of the value chain, in low-income production activities and in very low-income petty distribution activities. In the process, it also displaces a wide range of jobs and employment activities in production. For example, local producers of soap or local producers of yogurt or local producers of shoes are displaced by a number of these bottom-of-the-pyramid strategies by international products. It also creates a situation where the value that is concentrated at that level, at the bottom of the pyramid, is in the most saturated, low-skilled types of areas, rather than providing room for the poor to get jobs in the higher value and more lucrative types of activities. A fourth issue is that, in fact, the bottom-of-the-pyramid strategies tend not to so much to partner with the aid industry, NGOs, and with community groups, civil society, but rather to free ride on their networks, to use the activities and the contacts of NGOs and of informal and community networks to leverage the legitimacy and the contacts and the access to cheap labor that is available through these networks without investing in them or strengthening their capacities actually to deliver livelihoods or social welfare protection to the poor. In fact, the ways in which BOP free rides on the networks of the poor and on the NGOs create three potentially negative consequences. One, it tends towards the harnessing of donor resources and aid resources for the needs of international business, to use resources under the guise of patient capital to invest in business, trying to organize bottom-of-the-pyramid strategies, rather than using that patient capital to actually invest in the direct needs and infrastructure for poor people. Hindustan Unilever's famous Health in Your Hands project a few years back in India actually involved 70% of the project costs being met by World Bank resources and public sector resources from the state of Kerala.
Kate, 30 seconds.
Time up? Okay. It also undermines the hard-earned legitimacy of NGOs and leads them, in fact, to greater levels of suspicion, and introduces new stresses in the private sector, in the networks of the poor, by introducing market discipline and market pressures into the already overstretched networks of the poor. So I would argue that BOP, in fact, puts multinational corporations in the driver's seat of the international development system, rather than having a system that focuses on national development and on the needs of poor people.
Okay, thank you very much.